Hey, what's up, folks? Weege here, Racer X Films. Yes, I'm actually riding a dirt bike today in a roundabout way. It's actually KTM's 2017 EXC-F, which is their street legal dirt bike line. I don't even want to use the word dual sport because these are really dirt bikes with license plates. And with these bikes, KTM's full redesign of all their dirt bikes, which started with Ryan Dungey's 2015 factory edition 450, is now complete. In 2016, we saw all the motocross bikes and the XC closed course off-road bikes changed. And now 2017, the enduro line, which for four strokes includes license plates, blinkers, headlights, and everything else you need to ride on the road. Those have been redesigned as well. They're really fun dirt bikes that just happen to have license plates. We're gonna have some fun on them today, and then we'll tell you what they're all about. I do own a 2014 XC, which is a KTM off-road only bike. So it should be interesting to see how these compare, considering you can also ride them on the road. Let's go ride.
Well, it's pretty darn good. We're especially aided by great weather out here in California. The hills behind me are actually green, which the locals tell me is never the case. I did get to learn, though, if it doesn't rain recently, there's not a whole lot of traction out here. But it's still really fun on these bikes. Like I said earlier, I do have a 250 XC-F, which is a closed course off-road only KTM bike, but it's a 2014. It's the previous generation. And all the great things I think you've heard about the motocross and off-road bikes when they switched over in 16 pretty much apply here. Now, today I was riding a 350, but it actually feels lighter than the off-road only 250F that I have at home, and that doesn't have lights, turn signals, a license plate, and everything it needs to be street legal. And the engines are quite a bit different as far as the tuning compared to the SX and XC, which are the motocross and off-road models. But really, just to be more tractable, KTM believes that they've been able to keep all the performance you need in this bike, yet still keep it street legal as far as sound and emissions. And I'll tell you, it's a little strange at first. This bike is so quiet, it almost tricks you into thinking it doesn't have a lot of power. It's so much quieter than what you're used to with a regular private closed course only off-road exhaust system. But the more you ride it, the more you realize the thing has a huge, huge amount of grunt. A lot of times when you have these street legalized, emissions legal four strokes, when you first crack the throttle at idle, they'll flame out and stall. No problems with that whatsoever on this bike. And also what's cool is KTM didn't want to cheat the sound test with gearing either. The gearing's actually, if anything, a little too low on this bike. Traditionally with dual sports, they gear them super high, so they're running at a very low RPM in the sound test. Not the case here. This thing hits about 70 miles an hour, and that's about all it wants to do, which means you can run on most two-lane roads no problem. If you put a couple teeth on the rear sprocket, you can run on the interstate, but with a moto helmet and goggles, you're probably better off sticking to the slower roads and the dirt roads like we did today. I really like the lightweight feel. I really like the very wide power band. It's really easy to keep this engine on the boil, especially compared to a traditional 250F or even a motocross-style 350. But I think the thing I like best on this bike was the suspension. My bike has a 4CS fork. It's good at best. You really have to ride it hard. It's not really very plush. In some really rough GNCC type races I've done, if you go pretty hard and fast, it's okay. But this Explorer fork that they call it, made by WP, it's an open cartridge design. It's so much plusher than the 4CS I'm used to. Also, the rear suspension is the old school PDS. It's been completely redesigned, but that means the no-link rear suspension, which is a KTM exclusive. Now, I know that for supercross whoops, riders like Ryan Dungey like having a linkage, but a lot of riders will tell you for off-road riding, sand, and even some motocross tracks, the no-link design has its advantages. It kind of has a dead feel. Again, it's really plush. As we were going at a fairly decent rate of speed today, I'd see these rocks, and I kept bracing myself. In fact, I almost have some blisters after a couple hours because I was expecting the bike to deflect. I kept having to grip with my legs, hold on real tight, but I really didn't need to do that. It's so much plusher than what I was used to with the previous generation off-road bike. And, of course, you can ride it on the road, too, which is really, really fun. Really, it opens up a whole new level of riding. Now, if you're a full-on motocross guy, they do tell me you can maybe take this out on some of the vet tracks around here in California. You probably want a dedicated motocross bike if you're going to do that a lot. But for people like me who are really busy, meaning I don't have weekends to ride because I'm at a race and my wife's not too happy with giving me much freedom when I am finally home, a bike like this is a difference between riding out of the garage, finding a patch of woods 15 minutes away, putting in a half-hour moto, riding home, and being done within 1 hour. And that's really probably the difference between going riding and not going riding at all, which is pretty darn cool. Now, believe it or not, in this dual sport is some heart and soul, some heritage of old school motocross. Now, first we have, of course, the toolless KTM air filter removal. But I want to show you something in here that's crazy. KTM was working very, very hard to figure out how to make this bike pass sound and emissions inspection. That's actually a two-stroke style reed valve in the air boot. And believe it or not, the people that came up with this were Roger DeCoster and Dave Arnold, who were the left and right-hand men during Honda's glory days in motocross in the 1980s. Now DeCoster at KTM, and Dave Arnold was next door working for Husqvarna at the time. They heard that KTM was struggling to get this bike to pass sound tests. The muffler was quiet, but there was a lot of intake noise. So those two come up with the theory of bolting in a two-stroke reed cage into the air boot, and it actually allows a lot of that intake noise to leak out and make the bike much quieter. And the crazy thing is, they discovered that it actually gives the bike more low-end torque to the point where the motocross team is going to start experimenting with this setup as well. Like the new generation KTM motocross bikes, these bikes are lighter, they're shorter, they turn a lot better. They're actually so effective now that KTM used to have two lines of four-stroke enduro bikes, the XCW line, and then this, the street-legal EXC-F line. But they've decided to drop the XCWs because these dual sports are so effective in regular enduro type conditions. There's no reason to have a off-road only enduro bike because the weight, the power, there's so few compromises with the street legal design that there's no reason to have the XCW line of four strokes anymore. These bikes are available in 250, 350, and 500cc displacements. The 250, by the way, is new. They haven't had a street-legal 250 enduro bike until now, and the 350 and 500 certainly much improved from the 2016 models.